Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL. 8:07 on a Friday morning in July. The Morning Majority. Mine is Brian Wilson, who's off today. He'll be back next Monday. Brett Baer from the Fox News Channel coming up. We'll get into the latest on the debt negotiations, debt talks, and also somebody from the White House apparently calling Brett a lunatic in an email. So we'll ask him about that coming up about a half hour from now. Right now we're joined by Del Wilber, federal courts reporter for Washington Post, and a New York Times best-selling author of the book Rawhide Down: The Near Assassination of Ronald Reagan. I got to tell you, Will, Del, we still get emails talking about when you were in studio how much they love that interview and that book that you've written.
Oh, thanks. That was a great time.
Yeah. I don't understand what happened yesterday in federal court. These two prosecutors who, it seems to me, screwed this up beyond belief. You're great at telling stories. Explain exactly what happened and how in the world this thing was called a mistrial on day 2.
All right. Well, first of all, you're not alone. No one expected this, right? 2 days into this trial, we're going along. We've had 2 terrible, boring days of testimony from a House parliamentarian, snore, and another guy who was talking about, why the House had the right to investigate this, and they're going through this stuff. Now, it helps to understand that this case is about Clemens allegedly lying to Congress about not taking performance-enhancing drugs, and he did that in 2008. Now, to prove their case, they have to prove, to prove someone committed perjury, you have to prove the underlying facts that he did take the drugs, right? Steroids and HGH.
Makes sense.
Human growth hormone. So, to do this case, to build it, they relied heavily on Clemens' former trainer named Brian McNamee, who says, I injected him a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. McNamee has a lot of credibility problems, including admitting to lying in a 2001 police investigation. And so they needed other witnesses to corroborate what he said. One of those is Andy Pettit, Clemens' close friend and buddy, who told Congress that in 99 or 2000, Clemens told me he had taken HGH. Pettit's wife confirmed that in an affidavit. Oh, Andy told me he had this conversation with Roger, and that goes to Congress. The judge had ruled the prosecutors wanted to call Laura Pettit, the wife, as a witness to corroborate Andy Pettit. The judge said, no, that's inadmissible hearsay. It has nothing to do with the case. You could bring her in if the defense savages Andy Pettit's credibility. Fine. Well, yesterday we're at a hearing. We're at the trial. They're presenting evidence, Clemens' videotaped testimony before Congress, and one of the clips they're playing involves Rep. Elijah Cummings kind of grilling Clemens. And he's bringing up Andy Pettit. What Andy Pettit said. Well, Mr. Pettit told us that you told him this, that you took HGH, and you agree Andy Pettit's a good guy, right? Oh, Andy Pettit's a wonderful guy. He never would lie. He's wonderful. He just misheard what I said. Mm-hmm. I had said something completely different. We'd watched TV. We saw a bunch of old guys on TV who said they were taking HGH to prolong their lives and whatever. Kind of like a Viagra commercial, I mean. Right, so they're talking about that, which I find hilarious. Yeah, right. They're talking about this, right? Well, then Cummings goes, and by the way, just to verify what Pettit told us, we got an affidavit from his wife, Laura Pettit, and she told us that that Pettit told her this stuff that you told him, blah blah blah. Uh-oh. Right? The defense lawyer doesn't seem to be paying attention. He's talking to a guy at his desk. He leans it over, but the judge spotted it. Judge Reggie Walton, who oversaw the Scooter Libby trial, former prosecutor.
Okay, I knew I heard that name before, the Scooter Libby trial. All right.
He looks like a fire hydrant. I mean, he's a tough former college football player. Not a kind of guy he helped break up an assault once in Chevy Chase Circle, and I think, and like this guy was assaulting someone, he like tackled the guy and threw him to the ground, and federal judges just don't do that, Right. So he stops it. He stops it cold and sends the jury out and goes crazy. He goes, this is not a mistake a first-year law student would make. I said you couldn't bring up anything about Laura Pettit. Andy Pettit's a critical witness. Now you've introduced evidence that, one, Clemens thinks he's a good guy, and two, what Laura Pettit said, and I told you couldn't do it. How do I unring this bell? The jury now, no matter what they do, the jury's going to have in the back of their mind that Andy Pettit's trustworthy. Right. And, the defense lawyer goes, oh, yeah, we need an instruction to the jury, Your Honor, to tell them to ignore it. And the one just looked at him and said, that's what you want? And he comes back and says, so what do you want? We want a mistrial, Your Honor. And the judge goes, okay, mistrial, and he was like, this is like a huge error. He didn't know how to unring the bell. And
All right, a couple of things. Number one, how did they miss that? Was it just a mistake?
I think these are two real. The lead prosecutor is like a Joe Friday type, like just the facts man, straight laced.
Right.
Dan Butler, another guy, straight laced guys.
They've been around for a while, right? They have good reputations.
Yes, they do. And people in the office don't. People in the office and other sources I talked to yesterday, I think they just made an inadvertent error, and they just, there was so much going on, they didn't think that it was important. And I think the reason is because in the overall scheme of the trial, this is meaningless, right? Because the defense has said we are not going to attack Andy Pettit's credibility. In fact, in opening statements, Rusty Hardin said, "We're not going to take any shots at the guy," because their argument is he misheard.
Right.
After that, it doesn't matter what he told anybody, right? And so, I guess it kind of does in a way, but it's a kind of a small point in the whole scheme of the trial. And so, I think it just went past them.
So did the judge take it too far? Would most judges have done this? Would they have said it's a mistrial, or would they just say, all right, so we're throwing this out and you need to continue and we'll just move on? I think,
it's probably mixed. The lawyers, the experts, you have to interview experts about this because I'm not an expert on double jeopardy clauses and hearsay evidence. They said, some said the judge made the right decision, some said he didn't. It's a close call. The next call, the really interesting one is, Clemens isn't out of legal jeopardy, legal peril, right? The judge said, I want legal briefs from both sides on whether we can retry him without violating his double jeopardy protection, meaning, once you're acquitted of a crime, you can't be retried for it, double jeopardy in the Constitution. Right. It's a very important component. It prevents prosecutors from going after people over and over again. There's a clause within that once, like if you have a mistrial or something bad happens at your trial, you can't be tried again either. And so because the prosecutor screwed this up, they may have triggered Clemens' double jeopardy rights, and they have to argue that now. And that is a close call. Some say, oh, no, it's not close at all. Some say, oh, it's very close. Some say, oh, no, we should throw it out. And it's just like we're not going to know until Reggie Walton rules. And,
is it something
after that's probably not the last word.
Is it something like the egregiousness of the error on the part of the prosecutors?
Was it intentional misconduct,
okay.
Right? Or was it just such a bad mistake that they didn't do it intentionally, but it was so bad that you can't ensure. I mean, you just don't deserve another shot at the apple, I guess is kind of the paraphrase it. And I don't know. It was really early. There are factors that work in both sides. One, prosecutors screwed up, so that works in favor of the defense. But the defense asked for the mistrial. A. B. The defense didn't object when this started playing. It played for a good amount of time.
That's what bothers me. So defense was just sitting there going, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever." Yeah,
they're like sleeping too, I mean, that's pushing it too far. I don't know. I was looking at them and they were talking to each other and stuff. And then C. This was only 2 days into the trial. It's not like they had gone for 3 weeks and this happened and then the judge. And my guess is if this had happened 3 weeks into the trial, Reggie Walton may not have dismissed it because we spent so much time on it. So I don't know, it's one of those of one half dozen the other, and it's up to the judge.
A lot of people have been complaining about this since day one, that Congress should have been investigating in the first place, and okay, maybe he lied to Congress. Do we really need to go after him? How much money has the federal government, taxpayers, spent on this?
All I know is that they've never broken it down like that, but I'm sure it's in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. They had more than 103 law enforcement personnel working on it at one point. Yikes. They had 5 attorneys. They traveled all across the country. They impaneled a grand jury for quite some time in the district to take witness testimony. They were going to fly witnesses out here. I assume they have to do that, pay for that too. So it would have been a very expensive trial to prove that some guy lied to Congress. And there's an underlying theme in this too, is that what do jurors think? Like, oh my God, I'm sitting through this trial of a guy, a baseball player, for a game of staged entertainment, and he lied to Congress. So what? I mean, I think Anthony Weiner was on that same panel, right? And so, I mean, they would know. They'd be like, huh? One juror, potential juror, said these guys lie all the time. Congressman. Right. So that was in the background. I also don't know if the mistrial. This was a good jury panel for the defense. There weren't a lot of baseball fans on it. There were a lot of women who may not. Have known, Clemens' reputation for having thrown baseball bats at people and being a fierce competitor and stuff, and kind of a guy who was so aggressive he'd do anything. And there was one juror on the panel, I swear to you, that said, when during jury selection, She said, I thought Michael Vick had been done wrong.
Wow.
All right, so that's a jury I would want to keep.
Yeah.
Now you get another bite of the apple, and I bet you're not going to find another panel where you might get a juror who thinks that Michael Vick, a guy who basically put puppies to death fighting each other, had been done wrong.
All right, Del. Great to have you on the show. We appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Del Wilber, Federal Courts reporter, Washington Post, New York Times bestselling author.